Ready. I will call the meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome to the July 31st, 2025 Audit and Finance Committee meeting. We acknowledge we are on the traditional lands of Treaty 4 territory, a treaty signed with 35 First Nations across southern Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta and Manitoba, and the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nations. The city of Regina owes its strength and vibrancy to these lands and the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory, as well as settlers from around the world who continue to be welcome here in Regina and call Regina home. Some members of the committee and city administration may be attending through video conference. I would like to remind those individuals of the following. Please ensure that your video cameras and microphones are turned off. If a member of the committee wishes to speak, use the raise hand function and will be placed into a speaking queue. When speaking, remember to unmute your microphone and enable your video camera. All votes will be conducted with a recorded vote. Approval of public agendas. Can I have someone move a motion to approve the agenda at the call of the chair? Councillor DeCleese, I will call the question. Any opposed, or I'll introduce the motion or the agenda. Good. Okay. Call into question. Any opposed? No. Carried. Adoption of the minutes. Can I have someone move a motion to adopt the minutes from the public meeting held June 26, 2025? That was Mr. Ring. Any errors and omissions? Oh, any errors and omissions? Mr. Ring? No, any errors and omissions? Okay, thank you. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Okay, carried. Administration reports. I will now consider item AFC 25-15, 2026-2027 budget process. Can I ask Acting CFO Jeff May to please introduce the report?
Certainly. We are here today to report. The report before you presents the approach for the 2026-2027 budget process. In a nutshell, it's a four-step process. Steps 1 and 2 we're currently undertaking right now as administration, where we have asked all the operating departments to go away and look at their operations and tell us what, if any, funding changes they need for 2026 or 2027 to deliver the services that they are currently delivering at the level at which they are currently delivering them. The next piece of work is for them to then also describe and document for us any service level enhancements or new services that they would recommend to council. In September, we have scheduled a series of 5 meetings with City Council. In those meetings, we will go over the general operating budget at current service levels. So that's where we will present to Council in the first meeting an overview of where we are today with the cost pressures and revenues, our revenue forecast for 2026 and 2027, and any cost pressures that have been identified by administration to date in terms of delivering their current services at the current level. By service, there will be a documentation provided to Council in advance of each meeting that will outline each service, what it is, who provides it, how much it costs, how many people it takes to deliver the service, and what has changed in terms of levels of funding from one year to the next. So that'll be September. So the first 3 meetings we're going to concentrate on general operating. In the 4th meeting, we'll go over the general capital program. And there, what we've asked our colleagues to do is to simply roll over the plans that they made, that the 2025 to 2029 general capital plan that was in last year's budget document. We're just rolling that over to 2026, adding the out year 2030 to it. We've asked folks to, again, identify any of these projects that were already in the hopper that we already said we were going to do. Are there construction inflations? Are there cost pressures on these projects? We'll describe those to you in September. And then the last meeting in September will be about utility operating and utility capital, same exercise. We are not asking for any decisions to be made in September. This is to give a good grounding and a deep dive of information for you to have in your pocket for when you go into your December budget decision making. In October, service partners like Regina Police Service, Regina Exhibition Association Limited, Economic Development Regina, Regina Public Library will come and present their 2026 budget requests. So you'll have that information coming to you from them in October. Once we have that data, we will take the data we developed for the September budget meetings, the information from our service partners, the new services or service level enhancements or new services that admin would like to recommend, plus any of the items that council has either directed admin put into the 2026-27 budget or referred to that process. We'll wrap that all together in a document that we'll table in November, so it'll be out there in the public for people to look at, react to, prepare to come and speak as delegates in the December budget meetings that you're going to have slated for starting December 17th. And that's when the decisions will get made. So in a nutshell, that's the process that we've come up with.
Perfect, thank you very much. Councillor, please.
Thank you for that. That was very well described. I was just checking to see, that was passed unanimously at the June 25th meeting. I'm trying to find it in the notes. Well, I guess it wouldn't say unanimously, it was just passed.
I just have to do that procedural thing. Can we have someone move the report?
Oh, my apologies. Yes, I'll move the report.
Councillor, please.
Yes. I'm looking at the meeting notes for the 25th for City Council. If you could, yeah. And while you're looking that up, question number 2 would be, we've got 5 half-day sessions booked for discussions on budget. And would all 5 of those be open to delegates that want to come in and talk about anything they want regarding the budget, or does it have to have a certain topic tied to that day?
Through the chair, they're all public meetings like
Yeah.
any other council meeting.
Yeah.
And so there will be a report submitted and published to the website for people
On the
to
Friday
see
before?
and
Yeah.
know what's going to be discussed, and then they can come as delegations to speak to whatever topic they want to speak to.
So the topics will go out on the Friday afternoon beforehand.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And then the third thing, and this one is the big question. I've never done a 2-year budget before in the real world, in the private world. How many 2-year budgets have we done, and how successful have they been? And I'm not looking to change anything. I'm just asking why we do it. Are there benefits? Are there trade-offs? Would it be better to do a 1-year or a 2-year from a analysis point of view for the city? What are your thoughts? Is that an okay question? Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. May can certainly speak to this further from more of a financial and accounting perspective.
Yeah.
A few years ago, there was a push by council, one particular councillor at the time who was very focused on what was perceived as the benefits of a 2-year budget. Many municipalities have a 2-year budget, but I don't think there's anything that's right, wrong, or magical about it.
Okay.
Because what people forget is that even though it's a 2-year budget, the second year is the best projections that we have at that current time.
Yeah.
But people make the mistake of saying, well, that second year is set in stone. It isn't. We've done 1 2-year cycle here at the city.
Yeah.
And what happens is administration will come forward with a report respecting the impending release or the pending year 2 of the budget and say, look, things have changed. You know, there may have been funding allocated to X and it's dried up or it's not enough. So the two-year budget is primarily for planning purposes for a lot of entities and organizations, but we need to be clear that that does not in any way stop council from putting the brakes on something in year two, going a different direction. You just need to make an appropriate motion. So, but I'll let Jeff speak to more of perhaps the financial aspect of it.
Sure.
Through the chair, Mr. Nickel is hit the nail on the head in that it's difficult, you run the risk of making estimates 2 years out, and so your crystal ball may not be that good, and so you're going to have adjustments. There are many cities that prepare 4-year budgets, but what happens in every year is there is a report that comes to council for adjustments that need to be made to those remaining years in the budget. The same thing would, I anticipate, would happen here with our 2-year budget. We'll set 2026, we'll have 2027, but when it comes to 2027, just prior to the year, we will probably be bringing a report forward to say, here's a refinement of that plan based on what we know now.
Okay, so someone might be listening to this and say, so what's the point if you're going to adjust for whatever market conditions or city conditions there are? Is there a benefit to the 2-year that I'm not seeing if you're still able to make adjustments? It looks like you're going 1 year at a time anyway, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and again, Mr. May can add some detail to it. But again, it's for a planning purpose. A lot of organizations, I think you've heard them here on the floor of council before saying, well, yeah, we got year one funding, but boy, we sure wish we'd have been a little more firm on year two.
Okay.
Even at that, just because something is perhaps funded on a year-to-year basis, there may be existential circumstances that say, whoa, we can't fund that in year 3 because the funding is dried up, or maybe there's been something that's happened that physically we can't accommodate that. So it's a matter of, it's giving a very strong signal that that's down the path we're going.
Yeah.
But you have to keep in mind that it is subject to change.
Yeah, yeah.
And clearly, and I don't want to get, it's not for me to debate with members of council at budget time, but if you approve something over a 2-year period, I would respectfully suggest that you need very strong reasons or very good reasons to deviate from that sharply. Because that, if you do that all the time in a significant way, you're really taking away from the planning process or the planning objectives that was the underpinning of the 2-year strategy.
If I may add through the chair, yes. In other cities, especially when they have a 4-year document, it is a planning document, as the city manager has described. It sets the intention. This is what we intend to concentrate on over the next 4 years. These are our objectives. These are our targets. These are the things that we're going to concentrate on. And when adjustments are made, it's not a wholesale change. We're going to start over and redo the whole budget. It's about making adjustments for changes in the environment. Interest rates went up, interest rates went down, fuel prices went up, fuel prices went down.
Yes.
More that kind of thing. So
Okay.
it's more about declaring your intent. This is what we want to concentrate and achieve over the next couple of years, and this is our plan to get there.
Is there any merit then to doing all that heavy lifting up front like now to take us all the way to the end of our term, like a 3-year budget?
Through the chair, if that is the wish of council, then certainly that can be the process. We can go through, do that work, find those objectives, those things that are council agrees is what we should be aiming for over the next 3 years, and create a financial plan for it.
I'm thinking from the standpoint of the meat and potatoes, the roads, the signage, you know, the kind of things that I've been getting questions of now that it's summertime and kids are out playing, and I'm getting requests for speed limits to be adjudicated using digital signage. And it looked like we only had a budget this year for 8 signs, which is 4 roads, 4 sections of road, 1 sign on either end. Like if you were to plan that out over the course of 3 years, then you'd say, well, we have 20 or 25 in the plan. So that helps from your perspective in terms of planning. I get the will of council answer, but I'm asking you, is it helpful to you? And I'm asking the rest of us here, do you think it's helpful to us to just do all the hard work now that we have these 5 half-day sessions ahead of us to set the budget right up until the next election? Does that make any sense?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, or Chair. It may make sense, Councillor, but that would have to be a decision that was made by council.
Right.
Council's direction at this point is 2 years. I think that there's enough of a debate as to whether 2 years is appropriate. I'm not sure 3 or 4 years over a term for the size of Regina. You have to keep in mind that the amount of work that would be required to do that is considerable.
Oh.
Councillors themselves, you're not full-time. There's only the mayor is full-time. It could take some, like, if you're doing a 4-year budget, I got to think you're slogging down for hours and hours and hours.
Yep.
And I think part of the intangibles with a 2-year budget or a 1 year is, yes, it can be long and painful, but with some discipline, if you've got a firm strategic plan and objectives, you should be comfortable moving forward with year 2 of a 2-year plan, keeping in mind that there may be certain things that will cause you to change things. Mr. May said, you know, if the price of gas doubled overnight, if all of a sudden there was a significant cut to revenue sharing or a new tax was put on us or something, you have to be able to respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that even with a 4-year budget, I think you would be spending a considerable amount of time, in my humble opinion, here every year anyways.
Yeah.
Because so much changes right now in the dynamic economic situation we're in that if anybody thinks you can put a 4-year budget together and then say, see you in 4 years, I don't think that's realistic. I think it's going to come back every year. And your politicians primarily, at least when you get to full council.
Yeah.
And people are going to be clamoring for things over 4 years. They're not going to just stop saying, oh, well, council's made this decision. Everything is still going to be coming at you over those 4 years. So
Yeah.
I think council was persuaded to try it again, another 2-year budget, getting into more of a sync with the electoral cycle. I think we should play that out and see how it works and then evaluate it at that time.
Okay, so if we stick with what we're planning, we're going to have a 2-year budget and then a 1 year after that?
Yes,
Yeah.
through the chair, yes, that's likely how we would approach it.
Okay. Sorry for all the new person questions, but I don't know the history of the 2-year experience here. And I want to do something that fits your needs, but also can respond, you know, as Jim has eloquently pointed out, to the needs of our constituents. So, anyone else? I mean, I'd like to hear what some of our other people here think about the 2-year process.
The city clerk can respond to your question earlier. She got your answer.
Through you, Chair. So, Councillor Siklis, you had a question about the decision that got made with respect to this item that's on the floor that indicates that council considered this and made a decision on the 2026-2027 budget process at their June 25th, 2025 meeting. It was a unanimous vote in favor for the recommended budget process as outlined in the report.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you. Mr. Acting City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify one thing. I think the objective of a 2-year budget, Councillor Siklis, is that if it was successful, the objective or the expectation would be that we would do another 2-year budget. The reason when the first 2-year budget from the city was initiated, it was kind of turned out to be off cycle with election years. So when you came into office in November, you basically inherited something that was largely baked. And I think in a perfect world, what will happen is the new council, the next council that would be elected in the fall of '28, would be in a cycle where you wouldn't be starting from scratch. You'd be looking to say, okay, year one of a year two budget was passed. We still get to make any adjustments we need to make, but you're not starting from ground zero, which is what you faced last year, and we know the pain you went through. So I think it's meant to be on a rolling 2-year basis if, as council determines you like the process, it gave you what you needed, and if you don't like it, then you can revert back to a 1-year budget.
The city manager or city clerk. Let's comment.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add an additional comment, and I apologize if I wasn't listening, if the acting CFO had mentioned this piece. But when he was going through the process of what's going to take place as part of the initial preliminary special meetings that are being called in September to have the preliminary budget discussions, the other thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be publishing the agenda 2 Fridays before the scheduled meeting to give the public and council additional time to prepare. So it won't be published the Friday the week before the scheduled meeting. And partly because of that, some of those meetings are called on a Tuesday. And so by the time we get the agenda published, it doesn't really give delegations much time to look at that information and prep for the meeting and register as a delegation. So I just wanted to mention that additional piece of information as well.
Mr. Ring?
Through the chair, I just want to make a comment. I think that 2-year plan it's not, from what I've gathered, it's not set in stone, but it does give like a guiding map with the meat and potatoes, so the next council aren't, as you said, starting from ground zero. So it's still a live document or a live budget from what I've heard, and I think this is a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mancinelli?
Having gone through there when they implemented it, it was problematic to implement. The 5-year capital plan that traditionally showed up in the back of the budget books, as well as trying to track information year to year, has been problematic due to formatting changes, capital carry forward decisions of administration, and maybe problematic isn't the right word, maybe not as transparent as it could be, might be a better way to say it. And the idea of a 2-year budget to give that stability, to try to give administration more bandwidth to talk about the other 5-year projects while following through on the major projects already started with the capital carry forward was a positive move, I believe. We've made a lot of other moves since the time that this became the conversation to do with transparency, the variance reporting, the reports we just went through, the quarterly reporting that we're going through in this committee. These have all been pieces to try to bring transparency to the public and understanding of what's going on with the financial matters of the city. And of course, it's an evolving process. I think that being that every time we gather in this room and our elite managers are on the other side of there, they're not producing for their residents. That means they're not having product for the going forward of the city. They're just reporting to us. To have a 2-year budget to give them a little bit of room to finalize their planning, follow through on their implementation, and have the extra creative time to look at the 5-year capital plan is the smarter move once the growing pains are out of it. It's supposed to be a matter of trust between council and administration. The council is firm in its decisions, that we are looking forward, not just changing our mind on a flip of a dime. And administration can have faith that they can follow through with what they started, and they don't always have to backdate their plans should change happen. Stability is key for this, and I think that was the culminating reason for why this move was tried to be brought forward. I hope that's a good explanation. From my side of the chair, at least.
Thank you, Mr. Warra.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment on the Vice Chair's question, and then I do have some other questions too, but when we're finished this conversation. Like, I think multi-year budgeting is, for a big organization, is pretty standard. It allows, a little bit of pre-planning, like very little gets done in a year, like that you start and you finish in a year. Whether you're an organization, you're making change. So a couple of years gives them a little bit of runway to look and to plan and to enact things that they need to enact. 3 years, 4 years, depending on your capacity and your political cycle. But yeah, multi-year is always a good idea in my opinion. But so that's, if there's any other question on this topic, I'd defer my questions.
Thank you. I just actually have a question. It's more on actually how we're handling our projects. So when I look at budgets, we have essentially the OG&A, so Office and General Admin, what it takes for insurance and running this building, versus the capital projects of running capital projects out there. The question that really have, and I've been bringing this up a few times, is how are we going to handle the capital carry forward to ensure that capital carry forward gets reduced to zero? Instead of having that capital carry forward appear in budgets and we keep on stacking those numbers and these projects on top of each other, sometimes they don't get done for certain reasons, whatever that reason is. We have the ability to, if we have this pot of money, I'm just going to use $100 million for an example. If we don't get $20 million done in 2027, you don't get $120 million. You still get the $100 million. So we want to start looking at methodologies of reducing capital carry forward, triggering aspects to make sure our capital carry forward is going to nothing, zero, and the projects that we say we're getting done are getting done. Because otherwise that 2-year budget cycle, we're saying we're getting this work done, 2027 comes, we're going to stack that number onto 2027, which now affects a tax increase.
Through the chair, we are currently working on improving our reporting around capital carry forward. And I think what you're describing is carry forward specifically for programs as opposed to a particular project. So if I was to choose an example of a program, I would talk about athletic field restoration. It's something we do every year, year in, year out. But sometimes you don't spend all the money in that year. You might have some left over at the end of the year, and maybe you have the capacity and the need to use it all up the next year, and maybe you don't. And if you don't, you should give the money back to source. So first of all, I should ask for clarity, is that what you have in mind?
Well, I'm going to say two methods that would trigger. To me, that's, in my I'm going to say from my experience where I come from industry, that's your regular routine maintenance aspect. So, if we got a field that we refurbish the field, whatever the program looks like, or we're painting a wall, that's just a refurbishment. That's a maintenance thing. But if we're ripping up some infrastructure, replacing a whole bunch of, heavier lifting, bigger cost items. So if you look at it from the maintenance spend of the equation, we should, as the, if you want to call it that, the annualized capital to that effect should be consumed, and if it's not consumed, it gets returned to the source for sure. But the projects identified in the listing that we get in that big book, there's projects that have been identified, but then the projects don't get executed in that time. So we are asking for money in the 2025 budget to get that project done. We don't get that project done, we still have to go into 2026. We're still carrying on that 2025 project in 26. We raised taxes once for that, now we're going to raise it again for the next year.
Thank you for that. Through the chair, we are currently working on a capital governance policy and framework that will get to exactly what you're talking about. My colleague Charlene Callender, who is the Director of Treasury, is the one leading that work under Mr. Anderson, and so I'm not quite sure where that's at. But we are working actively right now on coming up with policy and framework around just that.
Would that be done before the budget cycle is the next question. done and approved, because that is a huge implication to, the city manager, when all this information comes forward to the city manager, says, I've got a new policy in place, here's where we're gonna handle capital carry forward, and we got a month to have this in place.
Through the chair, I'm not completely up to speed on the timelines. My understanding is that we're shooting to have this work completed and approved this year. When this year, I'm not entirely sure. I suspect we'll be overlapping with the budget process.
Thank you. Any other, pertaining to this one, this report, or open question? Yeah? Okay.
So I just have a few questions, just to understand your process. I've got no suggestion. I just want to understand how you come to put together a budget, and just for my own understanding. So, a lot on here is about the expense side of the budget, your program and operating. When do you how are you forecasting revenue, and how do you know what your spending limit is as you do your expense budget? How are you forecasting revenue?
Through the chair, we have, in terms of revenue forecast, we have a fairly good sense of where we are in terms of property tax revenue, because that's something under our control, so we know what that's going to be, and we can make some assumptions about what that would look like. We don't typically, as we start out this process, forecast any kind of mill rate increase. We have information about the current state of the assessment roll and whether or not that means there might be some increase or decrease in property taxes before any mill rate increase. We have stable funding from the province through the municipal revenue sharing program, so we can make a pretty good estimate of what we're going to get through that mechanism. And then from there, the other sources of funding, we do our best based on the information we have to figure out where we're going to be at in 2026 for those sources of funding. So we do start there. Then we look at the cost side, and one of the things that we'll have identified and be talking about with council in September is if there's a gap, how big is it and where's it coming from?
Yeah, because I was wondering, because the tail end of that discussion is, of course, the mill rate increase, right? So,
Mr. Chair, if I could just interject, if I could just ask Mr. May either to pull up an old document or going off the top of his head to give you a sense of the magnitude of that. So to understand the chunk of the percentage of our revenue that we actually get from property tax, which we have some control over, the stability of the municipal revenue share, which we have some, and then there's grants and miscellaneous, just so that you have an appreciation that some of those pots of revenue are considerably larger than others.
sure.
One moment, please. So, I was working on something very similar to this already, and with combined general operating and utility operating, the total revenue that the city brings in is $841 million. Of that, 40% is property tax revenue. Another 30% is fees and charges generated by the city. So like in the case of the water utility, it'd be the fees that you pay for your water bill and your waste system. Also fees charged at outdoor pools and things like that. The next big chunk is municipal revenue sharing, which is about 7% of the total revenue pie. And then after that, we're looking at municipal surcharge revenue, which we get from, which is what is paid by customers on their electric bill and their natural gas bill, and it's was put in place in the 50s as a way for the province to compensate cities for not having their own electrical or natural gas utility. That's worth about $43 million. It is about 5% of the total revenue stream. Everything after that is at the 1 or 2% mark of total revenue. So we have some fairly big chunks that we can take pretty good estimates at.
Yeah. So where are there items? So you do the status quo budget, and you compare that, so you are running revenue as you look at your, you know, your rate of spending. And you get a sense of, okay, if we don't want a mill rate increase, and we're not starting there, but we'll see where that lands, and then you're gonna, do you have, reduction options, like where do you, either program reviews or options to sort of change your business come into play? Are there reduction options that you consider along the way to sort of, you know, if you're not balancing before you get a mill rate increase? Are there things you can do to change your program and scale down? And are those options for city council, I guess?
So full disclosure, Ted and I worked at Treasury Board together, so.
Yeah,
I think where you're going with this is do we put out budget calls for 0%, plus 5%, minus 5%? I mean, that's how it used to be done
Yeah,
in the
or
government.
something, yeah, something there to sort of give you some options to.
Right, and I think those options might start to come to play in very preliminary portions of the budget where we start, as I think Jeff was outlining, what is the status quo, and basically in terms of what are our programs and service offerings that we're doing today. And then we look at that and we know what the projected revenues are, because we are bound to have present a balanced budget. The challenge, and this is where council has been apprised of where we're going this year, is to take those status quo, business as usual operations, whatever you want to call it, and there's a column for that. And then we have to take into account anything that may have been explicitly approved and added by council. And there I will look at the wastewater, or the water network expansion, which is 2.3%, I think, of a mill rate. So, we know that's coming. Now, the corporation, divisions, members of council may have a lot of ideas on things that they would like to add. So we kind of put those in a holding pattern to say, if and when you wanted to do that, there's a cost associated with that. And I think the final column, as I'm referring to it as, would be the master plans, which have a lot of ideas in them, but they're not worth anything until they are actually approved on the floor. So you add that up in 3 or 4 different subtotals, and over here, Mr. May has his revenue projections, and you look at a financial shortfall, because we cannot borrow to make up that difference. So that's when the discussions start about the trade-offs. So we need to get a tolerance from council as to where do members think they may have a tolerance for a mill rate increase? Where might they have an interest, perhaps begrudgingly, of changing service levels, changing a program, eliminating something? So that's where it's a back and forth thing. So we don't explicitly go out there and ask individual departments, well, what would you cut to get there? But once we get some of the preliminary work done with our finance officials, we know where it's starting to constrict. And so we can say to a particular division, okay, you requested in that list over here to hire 3 people to run a new program. That ain't gonna happen this year. So there's trade-offs all through. It really is a bit of a sausage-making exercise.
It always is, yeah.
But we have to understand that we have to continually balance that back and forth between our projected revenues and where our current expenditures are, where our anticipated ones are because of previous decisions, and then that will influence where council thinks it wants to go.
Okay.
Sorry for the Treasury Board reference.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, yeah, and you know where I'm going, because there's a certain way of doing it that sort of left the decisions with the councillors or the province at the time. And they sort of, own the decisions as to where things went. And I don't know how this works here, if that's ultimately, it sounds like that's where it goes. Like the considerations and deliberations are still with council.
That's right.
As to what they want to do and what their intended trade-offs are. Okay, and just on the, do you make a list, like do you do internally, not necessarily for the budget process, but do you have, do your departments and units, continuously improve? Is there some agenda there to sort of, every year, things change in the way you operate. There's always some ability to spend a little less, tweak your program, do it differently, maybe do it more efficiently, maybe not, I don't know. But to keep track of those things, and they don't necessarily have to be part of budget, but at least within the status quo, give people credit for, you know, re-engineering their processes to do things a little more efficiently and try to absorb some of that inflation.
Yes, through the chair, there is an annual call from our strategy and performance department out to operating departments for folks to tell us the good story, the good news stories they have about efficiencies that they found during the year, and we gather those things up. Yes.
Good. And sorry, just one last question, and then I know everybody's kind of, it's supposed to be a short meeting today, so I'm going to try and not ask questions all day here. Performance measures, any progress on that for this year's budget cycle? It's always great to sort of try to attach those objectives to your spending, so it's not just, you know, we spent so much dollars on roads, but rather, hey, we built as many roads as we did last year with the same amount of money or whatever. So any progress in performance measurement?
Through the chair, during our kickoff meetings with the departments for this year's budget process, one of the things we asked for them to gather together for the descriptions of the services that we're going to be providing, description on a service basis that we're going to be providing to council, are measures of how do they know they're being successful, so key performance indicators. There are pockets in the city where that's well developed and others where it's not so well developed. But everybody knows that this is a thing that we're going to continue to do. So for this year, there'll be some services that have good information on that and others where it's under development, but we'll keep iterating it until everybody's on the same, in the same place.
It takes a long time. Some places are easier than others. Some places are way more straightforward than others to produce those kind of measurements. Yeah, wish you luck, good courage. Keep going. That's it.
If I can just add to that, Mr. Chair, one of the things that members of council will be seeing as we go through these series of meetings in September will be attached service levels, so that we can describe a program that we offer, and we can say this is the current service level. And then what we're also going to do is use that as a comparator to other cities. So yesterday, for example, members of council would have heard repeatedly that we have more outdoor pools per capita than any other Western Canadian city. Well, we want to take that and extend that across a whole bunch of services to say, wow, we provide, you know, 5 times the service in this area than Saskatoon or Calgary or Winnipeg. Conversely, we are miserably failing at that because they get 20K of roads every year and we do 12. I mean, I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah, nice.
But that's going to be part of what council members will be faced with, so that they can actually make a comparison when someone says, well, they're doing so much better in City X. They might be in that category, maybe not in another category. So it's just part of that ongoing trade-off of how do you want the mixed bag of goods and services offered and paid for.
Excellent. I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Ring?
On Ted's question on performance, does the two-year budget allow council to have an updated picture on any multi-year projects at maybe 4 or 5 years and allow them to see X project is going on pace or it's not, that's why it's delayed and we have to adjust accordingly? Does this multi-year plan allow or give council clarity on these multi-year projects, like say 5 years or 6 years or anything longer than that, for example? Thank you.
Through the chair, for certainly on the capital side, if you're speaking about capital projects, that would be something that we'd be bringing to this committee on a quarterly basis about where the projects are at. Right now, we don't have in our reporting what I would call a little dashboard. Green, everything's great, everything's on track, it's on time, it's on budget. Yellow, there's some challenges. Red, uh-oh, we have a problem. We're looking to develop those things, and so that would certainly be something that we'd be providing on at least a quarterly basis to this committee, which then would make its way to council.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that probably answers all the questions for the report. Is there any other questions? I don't think we vote on this, do we? We just move it. Councillor Sigley, if you'd like to close? You don't want to close? Oh, you mean yes? You'll close? Okay, thank you. Okay. I call any questions. Any opposed? No. Thank you. Carried. I do have, before we adjourn, I do have one question now. This is bringing up every single time, two things. First topic is, where are the new auditor positions? How is that?
That stuff isn't on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to have that conversation, so.
Next time. Okay.
So we just need a motion to adjourn.
We'll have a motion to adjourn.
So just on the assumption, Councillor Bezo, that you're just asking me that question, and it happens to be very loud and everybody's in here at the same time. It's my understanding that Dinakar is still, it is not an easy target group to hire for. My understanding, unless Jeff knows differently, we have received no update from Dinakar since the last time he was here at the committee. I can certainly check with him. I'm not sure if he's actually away right now, but he is away. But
Okay.
it's tough going, and he cautioned the committee that it was going to be a while, and I would venture to say that over the summer months, it grinds to a halt in terms of people looking for that kind of a job. But
Oh, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Ring?